Hi, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Hannu TheHande Mäkinen, and welcome back to yet another horror story podcast. And I'm joined once again by Retrokaiser.
Once again, you're always joined by me.
Yes. Well, that's what once again means. Yes. Yes. So, it's been a while since we've done one of these, but the last one that we did, in case you are listening to us for the first time doing this thing, we have a couple of horror story podcasts that we do on this channel. We have the Kaiser and Hande YouTube podcast and the Unnamed Horror. And in those, respectively, I either read an Edgar Allan Poe story and Kaiser makes sound effects, or an H.P. Lovecraft story and Kaiser makes sound effects and observations and whatever, bad jokes and the like. But, excuse me.
Hey, buddy, I'm the one that makes the sound effects here.
Yes. But we also have a third podcast, which we've only done 2 editions of so far, which I have very imaginatively just dubbed the Horror Story Podcast, where I read a horror story I wrote, and Kaiser makes sound effects and observations and all the other good shit that you've come to expect from him. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, well, they're entertaining for me, at least. I don't know about anybody else, but yeah. And today, we are finally bringing you the third story in the Innsborough Cycle. Ooh, spooky. Yes, in case you're not wondering what the heck this is, you don't have to go and listen to the previous horror podcast, although you should, but you don't have to, because back in 2020, I wrote a little story called The Shadow of the Titan, which the title of which has now officially been actually changed. I'll tell you what it is in a minute. But it was inspired by us doing the Unnamed Horror, and it was written in a kind of a Lovecraftian style. It wasn't maybe a Lovecraftian horror story, but it was written in that style. And then last year I wrote a story called The Creature in the Basement, and that one was, in my view, an even better Lovecraftian story. I think I was much happier with that. And we did podcasts of both of those. And in those podcasts, I mentioned that I had intended... in The Shadow of the Titan, there was a character I introduced at very, very late in the story that I said that I had originally envisioned as being the protagonist of another story that was set in the town of Innsborough, but I never wrote that story because I never really... that idea never really went anywhere. But this year, back in October, I finally got off my butt and finally wrote that third Innsborough story, and that's what we are reading today. The title of today's story is The Face of Darkness, the story of Detective Hudson, and I'm gonna say right now, I hate it when stories have subtitles. Titles have subtitles. I'll tell you why the subtitle is there at the end of the podcast, but... this time, this is not going to be as Lovecraftian as the other two. Like, the last 2 stories that we did, I was intentionally kind of channeling Lovecraft, trying to kind of emulate his style. This one is a bit more my own. So, how are you feeling going into this next story?
Curious.
Curious, alright, yeah.
Yes.
But, this is, and I'm sorry, I'm going to apologize already. This is a slightly longer story than the last 2. Not by a lot, but we're looking at probably over an hour-long podcast on this one. So strap yourselves in as we start. And also, I'll apologize immediately. This one has a prologue. Yeah, no, I'm going to be...
Curses! Foiled again!
No, I'm going to apologize ahead of time because I don't think the prologue is very good. I gotta be critical of my own writing. I don't think the prologue is very good, but if you didn't listen to the previous 2 podcasts, I'm gonna put it on the time code. If you did listen to the 2 previous stories, you already know where this is going. But I had to put this in. If you didn't listen to the previous podcast, this is gonna give you the background of basically what happened in the other 2 stories. They're not, and let me stress something, they're not super connected. This is more connected to The Shadow of the Titan because this character appeared in that one. But anyway, let's get on with The Face of Darkness, the story of Detective Hudson. Okay. Prologue from the Journals of David Hudson, recovered 1978. What? No, 70s joke? Yes, the spookiest decade. What was that?
Oh, that 70s show theme.
Oh, you didn't just sing the
Hanging out.
down the street. Yeah, I would have at least expected a Bee Gees reference or something.
Well, that's a tragedy. You didn't get one.
Okay.
Hey.
Yeah. All right. Let's get on with it. Okay. The 1950s were an unkind time to yours truly. It was a hard time for a cop who wanted to do his job right. I'm not entirely sure about that voice, though. Because of that reason, I found myself so utterly unpopular in my neck of the woods that I was forced to leave the metropolis I had lived in my entire life and moved out of ways so that I was not a bother to anyone at all. I already found a spelling error. All right, gonna take that out.
Ooh, he's correcting it on the spot, ladies and gentlemen, in real time.
Yeah, I have a reason for doing that, by the way. But that's not important. Okay. That is how I came to Innsborough in 1951, this godforsaken gutted town. I would not call it industrious, though there was still some industry. The police force was small but well organized, but the terrible...
Hello!
Was that a hello?
Yeah, a very small hello.
A very high-pitched hello, like... Yeah. The police force was small but well organized, but the terrible little town had little to offer in life, or even death, as the case would be.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah. Innsborough is a miserable heap, for no other word. What?
That was just a miserable heap.
For no other word could accurately describe it. A heap of bricks. It feels ancient, but not in a stylish old world sort of way. More like in the way that an abandoned pile of rocks feels ancient. How a washed out riverbed looks ancient. How a gnarled, felled tree looks ancient. Gnarled is a hard word to say, I just realized. Yeah. This horrible town was hit bad by the Prohibition and the Great Depression. Yeah. It had an overcrowded and underworked police force.
I can't get out of here. It's too overcrowded. Hello.
Yeah. In 1952, there was a series of murders which we investigated feverishly. For a period of 6 months, bodies were found everywhere, horribly mutilated.
There's one.
I felt we should have kept our noses clean and tried to quietly... Sorry, Kaiser has a cold. Yeah, sorry, I'm getting over a cold. That was the reason for the cough earlier. Sorry about that. Okay. I felt we should have kept our noses clean and tried to quietly search for the true killers. But instead, those buffoons in the lower ranks decided... Buffoons, not baboons. Oh boy. But instead, those buffoons in the lower ranks decided to bully the mill workers and others, making everyone suspicious and no one willing to say a word. I tried my hand at solving that mystery, but to no avail. The killing stopped abruptly at around the same time as the lights went out in old Ernest's bookshop.
Reference.
Yes? Well, yeah, 1952, that was the reference to the murders from the old story, yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot to tell you, the new title of the Shadow of the Titan, I've decided that it's now the Shadow of Silo, in reference to what happens in the story. Okay, but let's move on. I met the owner, skinny dandy of a man. He witnessed...
Hello.
Yeah. He witnessed one of the killings, I'm sure, despite saying otherwise. Too many deaths were around there. That case vexes me greatly. He suddenly left in the dark of the night and never returned.
Whoop.
There were some ridiculous rumors about giant footsteps at the outskirts. As if these people had never heard of a cave-in. With a porous, crevice-filled rocky earth, those things couldn't be footprints. By the way, what do you say, crevice or crevasse?
Sorry. I'm thinking Kravis, like the guitarist Lenny Kravitz.
No. No, Cravise.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Kravitz. There's a T in there.
Kravitz.
Yeah, because I hear people, whenever I hear people saying...
There's a cream for that, isn't there?
What?
There's a cream for that, isn't there?
Okay. No, but whenever I hear people saying crevasse, like it's like the people who say Uranus instead of Uranus. Like it's like they just so badly don't want to say crevice. So that's why it always drives me nuts. Yeah. Okay. The rest of the decade went on quietly. Drunken fights, some arrests over small thefts.
Clip.
Clip? What?
That's handcuffs.
Ah, okay. I was sure you would say like something like an old lady going, "My purse."
Too predictable.
Yeah. One honest shooting between two poker partners. Neither survived. Easy police work and very droll. There was that mess up at the Steinmeier estate.
What a mess.
Yeah. Farm animals have been going missing. Yeah. I suspected traveling hobos.
Hello.
That's a hobo hello, huh? Okay. It's a very friendly hobo then. Okay.
Hello, give me a sandwich.
Okay, that's more like it. That was until the estate suddenly burned down abruptly. I think suddenly and abruptly are that's too much. I gotta get rid of one of those.
That's an oxymoron, isn't it?
Yeah, or it's repetition at any rate. Yeah, so that's not good. I'll get rid of suddenly. I like abruptly better. Okay. The entire old building. I'd only ever seen it from afar when driving drunkens to the farmhouses at the outskirts. We found Steinmeier's we found Steinmeier's assistant wandering around in the cold.
Ooh, hello.
When he woke up, he revealed it had all been a horrible accident caused by a log falling out of the fireplace.
It was a horrible accident caused by a log falling out of the fireplace.
I was hoping for another reference. Because
I've already done one of those.
Yeah. There were strange noises heard in the mountains for days afterwards. No sign of old Steinmeier, though. All right, and that's the end of the prologue. So now, let's get into the story proper. Part 1, The Letter from Cohen. Okay. A letter was suddenly dropped off at my house. I recognized... a very meaty letter. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It belonged to that disgusting dandy who ran Ernest's bookshop. His name was Cohen. He was warning me of a deadly presence in Innsborough. Hey, do you want to read the letters?
Yep.
Okay.
To Detective Hudson, I remember you and have decided that you need to be warned. Something horrible is about to happen tomorrow. Be prepared.
You're gonna read the...
Signed by yours truly. Signed by yours truly, Arthur Cohen.
Yeah. So yeah, this is one little thing. We never found out the name of the narrator of the first story, so that's him, Arthur Cohen. Yeah.
Yep.
With the Cuban Missile Crisis fresh in my mind, I assumed he meant commies were gonna overrun this little town, which was fine by me. I felt like having it out with a pinko.
Ooh, racism. Very Lovecraftian.
I don't know if pinko's racist. It just means it's just a, well, it's an insult at communists, but yeah, whatever. And I've been quiet too long in this town, and I've been drinking heavily. Cohen's letter. That's what you call heavy drinking. Oh, that's better.
That sounds like a cat drink, like licking at the bowl of water slowly, doesn't it?
I've been drinking really heavily. Couldn't stand on. Had to go on all fours. Okay. Cohen's letter made me angry, so I simply ripped it and threw it in the trash.
3 points.
Imagine my surprise when the following day there was an earthquake. Very strange, as there are no fault lines anywhere near Innsborough. The quake opened up the center of town, and to the surprise... very squeakily somehow. And to the surprise of everyone, revealed a strange network of underground tunnels of sorts. That's a weird sentence. I don't know why I wrote it like that. A strange network of underground tunnels of sorts. I'll put that ... in there. That's like he's kind of like trying to think about it, like as he's writing it. These tunnels were small, barely a crawl space, but the town was now
That's what she said.
Now wait a minute. If she said that, you realize that she would have the crawl space. Okay, never mind. That's getting a bit too grody even for this podcast. But get ready, you're about to have to read again in a minute.
Yep.
But the town was now having to close off roads for repairs, which made life all the more difficult for everyone. Another letter arrived from me the next day. It said this.
My friend Hudson, beware the thing from below. That's what she said.
Yeah, go ahead.
It is seeking a woman with eyes of green. What a wonderful world. My secret eyes of green.
Red anyway. Too. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Her eyes are the key. To save yourself, you must take them. Ouch. I have seen it. It hurts for her. Take her eyes and stare not into the darkness. Signed by yours truly, a Cohen.
A Cohen, eh? Is that what you get from pine trees? Oh, I messed that joke up. Okay. I love that. But yeah, I love that little...
shut up, computer. Computer swore at me.
Yeah, I love that little sudden, unexpected Louis Armstrong. Yeah. Okay, so... My friend, indeed, I thought. Who did he think he was? I could barely think of any women worth finding in this town. Yes, there were the street workers, but with the factories shutting down, even more, most of the jobs were now small offices. These people had wives waiting to slap them around the ears when if they dared to go out. And now with the town in shambles, it was hardly a good time for that sort of distraction. That sort of distractions. Yeah, it says. Yeah, that's...
wouldn't it be a little bit of a request? Wouldn't it be... Oh, yep, you've already done it. Put in quotation marks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly, he's gilding the lily, as they say, using a... what do you say that? What's when you say a roundabout way of saying something?
Double talk.
What?
Double talk. Double speak.
Double talk. Yeah, it's weird because we have a perfect word for that in Finnish. I'm trying to think of it. Okay, never mind. Well, let's move on. Okay, I decided to pay Cohen's babbling. I decided not to pay Cohen's babbling any mind. Sorry, I read that wrong. Okay, I was ordered to check out the work sites around the quake holes at night to make sure no one was trying to steal equipment. Way below my pay grade, but the police chief was a nice sort, so I decided not to gripe. Okay, here's my favorite sentence. It's completely ridiculous, but I arrived at the site at the dead of night. The time was about 1:35 a.m. I can't be sure, but I have an instinct for time. I can't be sure, except I set it to the minute. Yeah, I love that. I knew that was completely ridiculous, but I like that, so,
That sounds like some sort of 50s B-movie sci-fi line.
Yeah, I have a reason for that. I'll tell you at the end when we have the discussion section about my inspiration for this character, but, we'll keep that in mind. Okay, the streets were darker than usual as the quake had knocked out the street lights. All I could see was the distant shine from some window at the end of the street. Someone's evening light
shine.
Someone's evening light still happened to be on. Lucky bastard, I thought, as the nights had gotten so cold my normal long coat wasn't really doing the trick. Or else, maybe I'd gotten old. Suddenly, suddenly I heard some strange sounds from the work site.
Woohoo! Woohoo!
I moved my flashlight in that direction, hoping to see. Nope. Okay. The ground was wet, and the dark and the dark pavement, and the earth all ate the light. Yeah, that definitely. I definitely need. I keep hearing this beeping noise in the background. What is that?
That's my computer.
Okay, weird.
It's being a dick.
Yeah.
It does that sometimes.
Yeah, I'll put a comment there because that was. Okay. Moving the flashlight was as if I.
Whoops.
I dropped my flashlight. Sorry, let me pick it up. Moving the flashlight was as if I was just shifting black sand in front of me. Then I heard words.
Hello.
Words.
Sorry, couldn't resist that one.
Words, plural.
Hello, hello.
I couldn't recognize them, but I definitely thought they were human speech. At that point, I was convinced. Some fool had to have climbed down the crack into the ground and couldn't get up.
That's what she said too.
I cursed my luck as I prepared to climb down the crevice between the old pavement and the old ground. I dropped about 3 feet.
Whee!
and saw the ground was leaning down.
Ooh.
I then could finally shine the light upon the opening of the little cavern which the quake had opened up. I totally butchered that accent, though, by saying the R in cavern. I was really going for like a New Jersey kind of thing. I think you can probably tell, but yeah. Now it's like I said cavern and not cavern. Yeah, in the car park. Yeah, okay. I had to lean down and forward to see anything. I listened. A voice was echoing from inside the cave.
Well, maybe it wasn't a scream, I'm just assuming here.
A sort of, hey, hey, hey.
Hey, 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 hey.
Simultaneously, as if yelled and as if whispered. I thought you were going to do the whispers next, but okay. Can you do the whispers?
Hey, hey, hey.
Yeah, alright. I yelled, hello? Down into the cave. It seems like we had a lot of hellos in this story so far. And one lucky bastard. And at least 3, that's what she says. And as my flashlight passed...
Repetition?
Yeah.
Repetition.
And as my flashlight passed down the expanse of the tunnel ahead, I was knocked back from being startled.
Should have... No, wait. Had a bit of Street Fighter twist to it.
Yeah. A cat ran hissing from the tunnel. And climbed upwards. Yes. I'd fallen on my ass and picked myself up. All the while...
Ow, my ass.
Yeah. All the while cursing that my new coat was soiled and sandy.
Beep, 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 beep.
I climbed back up and paid the nightly noises no more mind. In the morning, that same pit was crawling with police.
Hut, 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 hut.
Oh, nice. You did the huts. I was expecting the 3 hellos again, like we have done every time the police show up in our stories.
Oh, I've done that gag too many times this episode.
Alright, yeah. A large, bloody puddle was formed, and 2 officers were dragging the body of a woman from down there. As I arrived, I noticed how the cave crevice seemed so tiny in the daylight. No, that's what she said this time? Okay.
No, we've done that joke to death already this episode.
Yeah, the woman's body
I'd
was...
love to say it, but... Yeah.
Yeah. The woman's body was nearly pale as she was being pulled out, and as I stared into her... Yeah, and as I stared into her black eyes, I was reminded of what I thought I had seen down in the cave. The outline of a face. Not a person, but a face staring with its mouth open as if yelling at me. That's when the cat had jumped and startled me. The face didn't belong to this woman, which meant something was down in that tunnel, and which meant that bastard Cohen was right in his insane ramblings. I arrived in the Innsborough morgue very late. Even though I was officially working on the case, the police chief was confident the poor woman had simply wandered to the work site and broken her neck while falling. Fucking nonsense, I thought. I was there. No one in their right mind, not even half drunk like I was, would dare to walk into the dark street by themselves. I love this little thing, like, where I kept, like, he kind of keeps, unintentionally, like, just mentioning every time, like, that he's been drinking.
A proud alcoholic.
Yeah, not proud, but he's just, like, he doesn't care. He's just letting it out every time.
Reckless drunk.
Yeah. I rummaged through the files in the dark. I found the woman's death record.
Yeah.
Dr. Watkins had already taken a blood alcohol reading, and it showed nothing. So the girl wasn't drunk. I knew that much. Someone had definitely dragged her down to the pit. In the darkened street, they could have had their way with her, and none would have been wiser. I felt a tinge of guilt, knowing that I had probably left too early from the site and could have maybe prevented her death. I also went to the slab. I normally hated doing that, but I had to see the woman's face again. It had been left in a vacant, dead expression. Her eyes were indeed nearly black from the caked blood in her arteries, as if she'd been held upside down. Otherwise, her pallor was apparent. She'd lost a lot of blood. She was a young thing, but not a street worker. Her hair was too fine, her nails too clean. She didn't have any pock marks or telling signs of low-income living. She'd been picked intentionally, but her eyes were amber, not green. I felt like I needed a shower as I slid her slab back into her corpse cabinet. As I did, I could swear I was hearing the same awful noise as I did down in the crevices.
Hey, hey, hey.
Alright, then, part 2, The Face in the Darkness, is next. Yeah,
Wish my computer would stop beeping. It's getting annoying.
What is your computer doing?
Does it when it's got too many things plugged into it.
Oh, yeah. It's not a Dell, is it?
Oh, close. It's an Alienware owned by the same company.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm just saying, like, this week, I'm not sure if I cut this out, but this week, I have a Dell laptop at work, and it's been a complete bitch for, like, several weeks now, so, yeah. So if it's that...
Sounds like a Dell.
Yeah. Yeah. Alright, but yeah, let's continue with the story. After the sudden death of a woman, the Innsborough Public Works began to work feverishly to cover the holes caused by the earth tremor. A gash had split almost a third of the city. The solution was to simply run gravel by a truck and fill in every area where the pavement had broken away. This way they hoped to soon have the dark streets usable and their streetlights fixed. It was not the Public Works' lucky day. The dark clouds began as dark clouds began gathering over a massive downpour, began slowing the work. Trucks were getting stuck in the wet sand and gravel.
Oh
no! And that needs another comma. Yeah. And soon men were working harder just to liberate their cars rather than fix the holes. I secretly hoped the wet weather would keep any foolish civilians at bay. But once again, myself and the rest of the police force were forced out into the cold and now wet night to patrol the streets. I think the chief's hopes was that our presence would keep the woman killer at bay. By complete happenstance, one of the big crevices had split up the street in front of old Ernest's bookshop, and I began remembering the old murder cases from the past decade which were never solved. Was that dandy Cohen really a killer? He didn't seem the type, but again, Ned Gein didn't seem the type either. By the way, yeah, the dandy there. That's definitely a bit of a slur, you know. I was thinking about, like, should I use more, like, you know, offensive words for, you know, him describing Cohen, but it's like He's calling him womanly. He's not really calling him, gay. But it's basically the same kind of insult. Yeah.
Feel free to cut this out, but Camp Cohen could have worked as well.
Yeah. Okay. Out of sheer morbid curiosity, I tried the handle of the door to see if it was open, but it was obvious that the door had been locked and closed ever since Cohen left Innsborough. The lock had even become slightly rusted. However, looking at the huge hole in front of the house, I felt yet again drawn to it. The maw of the cave, leading underground, seemed almost twice as large in the lightless night. I almost said lightless light. Sorry. I felt like I could just jump down there. I heard the whispering voice again.
Hey, hey, hey.
You know what? That time it actually sounded kind of creepy. I decided against my better judgment to investigate. I leaped a distance that indeed felt like I had fallen twice as low as before.
Boing!
I immediately regretted this and wondered if I'd be able to climb back up. But a collapsed plate of asphalt next to me appeared to be at a shallow enough of an angle to make that possible. I walked on down through the rock opening. My stomach... Yeah. My stomach got caught slightly, but having passed the opening, the cave seemed surprisingly larger. Not that much, though. I was still crouching and holding my breath. I walked down to about 40 feet's worth. I felt when sudden... I felt... yeah, sorry, that definitely needs commas. When suddenly the cave came to a fork, or more like a T-crossing. A tunnel to the left and right of me, both equally ominous, and they made me immediately want to get out. I began wondering if the killer had been using these tunnels for escape. Could he be still hiding underneath there? My mind was racing as I felt increasingly ill at ease. My back was beginning to ache. On the walls, where I had not really paid much mind before, I suddenly realized there was something that looked like ancient writing, or something like writing. The letters looked strange to me. Not Asian, not Cyrillic. I didn't know what they were, or they felt like they'd been in the rock for a long time. They had worn with the stone around them, almost tan from age. I began wondering what the guys at the station would think if I suggested searching the underground for the killer. I had begun to suspect that the chief was probably going to quietly end the investigation into the poor woman's death and just pretend like it never happened. Wouldn't have been the first time. My light then caught something in one of the tunnels. I once again saw it for only a second, but it appeared almost like a face with a dark body. But before I did anything else, it turned and ran away further into the tunnels. You know what I was hoping for was the Three Stooges noise. That one, yeah. When Cohen actually retreated in the tunnels, in the Shadow of the Titan story. Yeah, I was scared stiff, and for a good minute simply shone the light down the tunnel. Finally, I gathered my resolve and exited back the way I came, promising I'd never be so stupid as to crawl into unexplored caves ever again. The next day, I placed a phone call to a respected geologist from the neighboring town of Troyden. But he simply laughed when I suggested there was an intricate cave system underneath Innsborough. After apologizing for this fit of laughter, what, no apology?
Sorry.
He explained that he'd conducted a survey of the town before and had found that, yes, while there were some oddities in the makeup of the soil and foundations, were made of an especially porous and soft rock, a system of caves would create such a huge hollow that the entire thing should collapse under the very weight of the buildings. He had heard... Yeah, he had heard of the earthquake and explained that he too was very curious as to what had caused such an anomaly. He offered to come visit me and give me his expert opinion in person, but I declined. I still wasn't sure what I'd seen down in the cave, I still wasn't sure what I'd seen down in the cave, and my investigation of the woman's death was strictly unofficial. The real investigation had landed on O'Hara, 10 years younger than me, but he now outranked me. He was totally at a loss, and I got the impression he wasn't too keen on investigating the murder, especially given that the town was still in complete disarray from the rain. Yeah. And by the way, in case you're wondering, O'Hara, this is the other cop from the other story. He finally has a name. I'm doing like a bunch of housekeeping here, like, all the unnamed characters from the previous story, who weren't called Gonzalez or Hudson, finally have names. As I returned to my desk from another fruitless late-night patrol, I was shocked to find another envelope had been left on my desk. It simply read, Hudson, but I instantly recognized the handwriting as belonging to Cohen. I immediately read it.
Hudson, seek the bell of blue. Stare not into the darkness. It will find you otherwise. Cohen.
The Bluebell House was a historical society which had been established some 5 years earlier. I realized that if anyone had knowledge about the past or possibly the foundations of Innsborough...
Wait a second.
Yep.
How is the letter marked Cohen when he said that the letter wasn't marked? The little dash.
Wait a minute. What do you mean it wasn't marked? Where did it say that?
It says, as I returned to my desk after another fruitless late-night patrol, I was shocked to find an envelope had been left on my desk. It simply read Hudson, but I instantly recognized the handwriting as belonging to Cohen. It didn't, and then the letter's marked as it's written from Cohen.
I mean, it says about the envelope simply said Hudson, but yeah, maybe the wording could be a bit more precise there. All right. Okay, but yeah, sorry. Where was I?
No. I know it says it's to Hudson, but when you got, let's just move on.
Yeah. What, you just left a little note that just said Hudson?
No. It's like at the end of the letter it says Cohen, but it didn't. It never said anything about the letter actually being from Cohen. It just said that he recognized his handwriting.
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah. Okay. But I mean, he recognized it on the envelope. But yeah, whatever. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I realized that if anyone had knowledge about the past or possibly the foundations of Innsborough, it might be them. The very next morning, I sauntered in and asked if there were any local historians I could speak to. There happened. Oh, that's a mistake. Okay. There happened to be only one. Dr. Judy Edgewise. She'd done her dissertation only last year, though, so I was a little skeptical, but decided that it was worth a shot. Seeing her... Yep, sorry? Shot. Okay.
Yeah.
You're being very quiet. Like, could you move up a little closer to the microphone?
Hang on. Let me fiddle with my knob here and turn my voice up.
Please don't say that.
What? I got a little knob on my microphone that I can twist and turn that controls the level of my voice.
Bow chicka wow wow. Innuendo. Yeah, you were missing those old, favorites. Man, we gotta do another Lovecraft story though. I've been wanting to do Color Out of Space for a while now. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sorry. Let's continue with this fucking piece of shit that I wrote. Okay. This tripe that I wrote. Okay. Seeing her, I immediately wished I was 20 years younger. Edgewise had the appearance of a full adult, but also the nubile beauty of a woman any man would go crazy for. Yeah, so he's a drunk lech. Don't be surprised. Mm-hmm. I couldn't help but to immediately stare into her eyes. And no, this time actually eyes, yeah, so he's not staring at her boobs. Mm-hmm. They were not green.
Sorry. Hey, boobs down here, sailor.
My boobs are down here. Hey, my boobs are down here. They were not green, however. Instead, an icy, piercing blue. I struggled a bit to present myself, but flashing my badge made her see that I meant business.
I'm glad it was only his blood. I'm glad it was only his badge that he flashed.
Oh boy, it didn't. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Moving on. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I gotta go blow my nose. I'm back. Yeah, I laughed too hard, so gunk got to build up. Yeah.
Unfortunately, men your age have that problem.
But I'm ticked. Yeah, that's a bat. He flashed his badge. Okay.
Mhm.
She confessed that she'd only been working at the Bluebell for a short while, but had become interested in the local history, particularly its incredibly violent past. She had made note of the many unsolved killings, and she had noticed that this was a recurring theme in the town's history. I was not pleased at this assertion. She may have not meant it as an insult, but I obviously couldn't help but to feel a measure of guilt over those unsolved killings from my past. When I asked about the underground caves, however, she professed no knowledge of such things, but admitted that she had not had time to go through the town's oldest records. These were pamphlets from the town's founding in 1799, and some, she suspected, were even older. I asked of her if she could maybe look for a reference to underground tunnels. She was curious to know why I was so interested, and I confessed that it was related to the inexplicable earthquake. This seemed to have aroused her interest as well.
Ooh.
And she promised to look into it and get back to me. I dreaded the following days and patrolled vigorously. Well, nothing about patrolling vigorously.
That's him patrolling with dread vigorously.
I even stopped drinking for a day to help myself stay sharp.
Ooh, wow, he is desperate, isn't he?
All the while, I kept hearing the strange noises in the night.
Hey.
The human-like weeping and wailing.
Arr!
Sometimes it was almost as quiet as a whisper. Sometimes it felt like the voice was coming from somewhere close by. I kept thinking of the cave systems and wondered if the thing which I had seen, whatever it was now hunting around or merely taunting me. Nice! Friday the 13th sounds there. Okay. Cohen had warned me to stare not into the darkness, and I had already done so twice. I began to wonder if I had made a huge mistake by going down into the caves.
Yeah, don't do it too much, you'll go blind.
That doesn't make sense. Going down into the caves. You're making a jerking off reference there, but...
It also doesn't help that you're staring into the darkness, and don't do that for too long, you'll go blind when you're already blind.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
But at this point, I was too deep. I was in too deep.
Innuendo.
Figuratively and literally. I knew something had killed that woman. Something was hiding underneath the city. And as long as no one did anything to stop it, something terrible was bound to happen. I couldn't do the capital thing there because that was a different something. Yeah.
No clobbering time.
Yeah. The week went by in a disappointing fashion. A few more of the huge holes covered up, but the rain was not stopping, and fixing the roads was beginning to take its toll on the poor fellows at Public Works. At least the street lights were being fixed. Dr. Edgewise had not gotten back to me during the whole week, and I was becoming nervous. I called the Bluebell, but it was... Yep.
I'm just sounding like bloody Frankenstein's monster at this point.
Oh, yeah. I called the Bluebell, but was simply informed that the doctor was not there. Son of a bitch, I thought to myself, and took to the darkness to look for answers. Have you noticed that every single time that there's been dialogue in quotations, it's just been saying stuff like "lucky bastard"? Yeah.
Fucking nonsense, son of a bitch.
Yeah. The chief had finally stopped the nighttime rotation, probably thinking the town was now safe, so I was not needed at the station. I broke into the Bluebell house through the back door.
Oh, for the back door. Huh.
Well, actually, no. That was good. That was a good sound effect. Not swiftly or cleanly, but at least quietly enough that no one had heard me.
Yeah, good sound effect, huh?
The stained glass on the back door was loosely fitted, so much so that I could fit a small knife into the window crack and work it loose.
Innuendo.
I then managed to get my hand through to open the door on the other side. I sadly stepped on the glass on my way in. On my way in. Well, actually, there the sound effect would have been appropriate, but it was a little too early. Yeah. Okay. But decided that it wasn't worth getting worked up for. I made my way to the back office where Dr. H. Wise said the most ancient records were kept. She was not joking about their age. Upon opening the back door, I was greeted by shelves filled with old, dark brown parchments. Some were in dreadful condition. Most seemed almost unreadable. Underneath the shelves there were faintly scribbled dates, which were almost too faint to see with the flashlight. I attempted to hit a light switch, but was disappointed. But was disappointed to discover the light in this room had burned out. Not exactly sure what I was looking for, I simply grabbed some parchments from the shelf. And titled November 1789. 10 years older than the founding of Innsborough. The documents were all written in uneven cursive, and sometimes the paper was darker than the ink that had been used. I tried desperately to look for some kind of map, or anything about the founding of the town. Perhaps secretly I was hoping for some kind of a record of the cave system, maybe from some prospectus from long ago.
Hey there, love.
Australian prospectus for some reason. I was at least hoping for a banjo.
Sorry, prospectus. I was doing a prostitute impersonation.
Ew.
Let me gold in those heels.
All right, that's better. All right. All I did discover. All I did discover was some scribbled drawings, but I immediately recognized them. They were the ancient symbols in the rock of the cave I had seen. The writing was hard to make out, but I eventually deduced that the town's founders had not left these symbols. Instead, they had been there far longer, perchance, made by the Indians, which had lived on that spot until they too had all died. The parchment made no mention of the cause, but again, this seems to have happened long ago. I was distracted by my
far away.
Yes, I was distracted from my research by a noise in the other room.
What was that?
I immediately cursed as having been found out, but then I began.
Oh, sorry, I mean, what the fuck was that?
But then I began hearing a ruckus.
Boom, 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 boom.
As if something was being thrashed about violently. What?
That's just making a drum solo sound with ruckus and
yeah. I immediately ran out into the hallway with my flashlight. A thumping sound emanated from the next room over, and I realized the door was locked. Putting my whole weight on it, I pushed the door and forced it open. I looked down in horror as Dr. Edgewise lay on the floor with her neck having clearly been broken. She had also struck her head with blood flowing everywhere, blood flowing freshly. I looked around furiously and saw something moving in the darkness. I held my breath. Yeah, I held my breath, closed my eyes.
Heavy eyelids.
Something pushed me, and I suddenly fell, hitting my head in the process.
Bonk.
I woke up with the lights on and a doctor hovering over me, pressing an ice bag against my head. Detective O'Hara was talking to me, but my head hurt and there was a lot of commotion. I couldn't focus. Eventually, I realized that he was asking me about the pool of blood on the floor. I couldn't answer him at first, but then I got the words out. Judy! I was taken to Innsborough Hospital for a checkup. Oh yeah, finally they could afford that police car. Yeah. No, actually, yeah, I corrected you because there was In the other story, they were just running to the site and like, wow, this is a dinky town. At the end of
That was supposed to be an ambulance.
Well, okay, yeah, all right, yeah. And there I was told I told what I had seen. I lied and said that Dr. Edgewise had called me to the Bluebell because she had something urgent to tell me. I didn't want to, but I couldn't just admit I'd broken into the house. When asked about if I saw my attacker, I suddenly felt my lips freeze. Yeah. It's not as if I didn't know, but the words just didn't come out. It was a bizarre sensation. The other cops ceased their questioning when it was obvious I couldn't say anything. The public works men had nearly managed to cover up all the holes, but at the hole near Ernest's bookshop they found another large puddle of blood. And upon investigating the door of the cave, they found the body of Dr. Edgewise lying there. Questions were directed my way for obvious reasons. However, as Ernest's shop was all the way on the other side of town, I think O'Hara was eventually convinced that I couldn't have killed her, dragged her corpse there, and somehow knocked myself out. Still,
that'd be incredible.
Yeah. Still, I was shocked. Still, I was asked to stay home for a few days as my circumstances were looking increasingly suspicious. When the darkness came upon me at the Bluebell, I had closed my eyes, but I had seen it. I was now completely convinced of what was going on, even as my lips failed. That bastard Cohen was right all along. The thing, the strange dark mass with a human-like face. I don't know what else to call it, so I'll simply call it a phantom. What was that?
Iron Maiden reference, Phantom of the Opera.
Okay. For a second, I thought you said Iron Man reference, but
Iron Maiden.
Iron Maiden, yeah. Okay.
Not the man, but the maiden.
Yeah. Yeah. It was stuck down there in the caves all this time. Maybe the Indians trapped it there, or maybe it had always been there, lost in the caves. Now, with the earthquake, there were all these tunnels leading to the surface. For whatever reason, it was looking for women and killing them. Why? For the eyes? Amber eyes on the first woman, blue eyes on the second. I had still not found the green eyes, which Cohen spoke of. I felt I was running out of time. I was starting to wonder if it would be best to not try to interfere. After all, the public works were plugging up the holes and maybe trapping I'm starting to regret using the word holes all this time. And maybe trapping the phantom in the process. But could I really be sure? I stayed at home for 3 days nursing my head with a large bump where I had been struck. One thing just kept me up at night. Damned noise, the damned voice.
Hey.
It had to belong to the phantom, and I could still hear it.
Sorry. Hey, it's Phantom Albert.
Yeah, I was wondering when we were gonna get Albert in here. Okay, but we're now very close to the end of the story, so here we go. Part 3, The Eyes of Green. After 3 days...
Roses too.
Yeah. It's the ghost of Louis Armstrong that's going around killing the women. Oh boy.
What a wonderful world.
Except he should still be alive. This was still in the 60s.
Yeah, I think it's... Yeah.
But you have presented an interesting... It's a time-traveling ghost of Louis Armstrong. Yeah, okay. After 3 days, my headache...
Picturing Louis Armstrong just dresses like the Phantom of the Opera now.
Oh boy. After 3 days, my headache had become unbearable. I'd run out of aspirin, and I knew the pharmacist was closed.
Oh, that's a terrible feeling.
It was dark out, and I knew I couldn't get sleep without my medication. Against my judgment, I dragged on my coat and headed out towards Innsborough Hospital. On the way, I prayed I wouldn't hear the noises, but it's useless. I hear them constantly.
Oh, these damn noises. Oh, sorry. Hey.
I found myself counting steps towards the next streetlight, in vain trying to forget Cohen's warnings and hoping that I'd wake up from this nightmare. I felt relief as I gazed at the cold lights of the hospital. There was no one at the front desk, so I yelled for help.
Help!
Finally, a nurse ran to me. Or not ran. She did that incredibly fast walk women in heels sometimes do.
That made it sound like she's galloping there, doesn't it?
Yeah. It would have been impressive if I had not been in so much pain. The nurse told me to quiet down, but I managed to tell her that I had a terrific headache and needed help. She dragged me
That
off.
old pickup line.
She dragged me off to a dark patient room and practically pushed me onto a bed, telling me to be quiet while she got some pills. At that very moment, I had not glimpsed at her. Sure, she had a nice figure, dark hazel hair, but the pain of my headache had sort of kept me from looking directly at her. She returned with a small aspirin pill and a glass of water. She shoved them in my hand and then ran with her heels clopping away as she went to tend to some other poor fellow on the floor. I had my medicine and counted the seconds between the throbs of my head. It helped.
1, 2, 3, ouch!
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, ouch!
It helped. The throbbing stopped. The ache subsided. I was not well, but I felt relaxed enough to breathe quietly. I even momentarily forgot about the noises. I fell asleep. The nurse came to wake me and said that I'd been snoring. It's a good sound effect there. She said I had to leave because I hadn't been formally admitted. I was in better spirits and told her it was quite all right. I even apologized for the intrusion. Just then I heard it.
Hey, hey, hey.
Clear as if this voice was being spoken behind me. The Phantom's call. I love that that it is now just the hey, hey, hey. I turned around and saw nothing. And then, just suddenly, the lights went out. Power outages were not uncommon in Innsborough, but I immediately had a horrible feeling. In an instant, the small patient room was dark as pitch. The nurse had panicked as Mitch, but I calmed her, saying the lights will come back on. I found my cigarette lighter, and in its faint light, I saw the distraught young woman's face and her eyes. Those were the deepest, darkest, most hypnotizing green I'd ever seen. She was maybe taken aback by my gaze, and she suddenly turned in the direction of the noise. "Don't look at it," I said, warningly. "What is it?" she whispered, terrified. "The darkness," I said. I no longer felt my lips freezing. I couldn't still quite see the figure, but I heard it.
Hey, hey, hey.
Yeah. I heard the Phantom coming closer to me, and the nurse, both huddled around the little flame of my lighter. I prayed the light wouldn't go out, and instead the lights of the hospital would return. But with every breath, I felt the damn thing coming closer. Finally, I almost saw it reach out. I pulled the nurse away from it, and the thing grabbed me by the neck. I closed my eyes and kept them shut. The Phantom tossed me like a sack of potatoes. I looked and saw the nurse cowering on the ground. I grabbed her hand, and we both ran out of the room into the dark corridor. She was overcome with panic.
Neep,
What?
neep, neep.
Okay, that was a Roadrunner reference. She was overcome with panic, and I couldn't remember where the exit was. Things fell as the Phantom followed us, knocking over chairs, vases, and anything else.
Very clumsy Phantom.
Yeah, and anything else its dark body touched while it chased us. To my horror, I realized I had run to the wrong end of the corridor, and there was nowhere for us to go. From the blackness suddenly came flying various things. A table, a tray, a glass jug.
Anyone want some drinks?
All barely missing my head. I realized there was a door nearby and told the nurse to run towards it. She ran ahead of me, and I couldn't have predicted what happened. Immediately behind the door was the railing of a hidden staircase, and I heard the...
that staircase, apparently.
And I heard the nurse scream horribly as she fell over it.
Oh.
I, fe- I felt one of her shoes fly past my head as she fell head first over with a thud. Panicking, I ran down.
Thud.
Panicking, I ran down to the bottom of the stairs, but it was too late. She'd landed on her head and broken her neck on the way down. Now, in utter desperation, I didn't know what else to do. I closed my own eyes and dug my fingers into her lifeless skull. And as I felt
Kinky.
And as I felt the darkness coming over me, I reached out and opened my fist to the creature.
I see what's going on here.
Okay, yeah. At the trial, I was declared not accountable for the nurse's death due to insanity. I told the story to a Trojan psychiatrist who said the only reason he wouldn't lobotomize me was because I'd been so utterly calm and polite. The calmness came as the phantom left. The last pits of Innsborough had been filled a few days after they discovered me lying in the hospital with the dead nurse beside me and her eyeballs resting in my fist.
Yep.
I've been condemned to spend the rest of my life in a small white room listening to the ramblings of madmen.
Hello, welcome to the Unnamed Horrors podcast.
The empty sympathies of nurses and the amused sarcasm of doctors. But at least I'm no longer in Innsborough. At least the Phantom isn't free anymore. And Cohen is no longer sending me his damned letters either. I'm finally free of that accursed town forever. I will die in this quiet room and shall never more have to stare at the face in the darkness.
Oh, no, until the sequel.
In the end. Yeah, okay. All right, so that was The Face in the Darkness. So, as we always say at the end of these podcasts, what did you think of that story?
Very Lovecraftian mixed with detective noir.
Okay, you thought it was Lovecraftian. I thought, actually, so that was kind of the thing with this story, why it took me so long to finally write it, because, well, I told the story before on the previous podcast how the Shadow of the Titan, which is now called the Shadow of Silo, that I nailed the kind of Lovecraftian vibe, but I didn't really do the Lovecraftian horror, because the thing that was killing people in that was it was a giant, and then my motivation for writing The Creature in the Basement was because I felt like I could do a better job emulating Lovecraft, and I did. I did a much better job with Creature in the Basement, and that's the reason. That's partly the reason why at first I didn't want to write the Hudson story. Well, and also I should clarify, this is not the Hudson story that I originally planned to write after The Shadow of the Titan, because that story was actually, I think, was supposed to be, it's been long enough that I don't fully remember, but I think it was supposed to be a more direct follow-up to the previous story, but I felt like I didn't want to write the same thing again. So I feel actually, so that this story isn't so much in the style of Lovecraft. It does have some things, like, you know, the narration style and thing, you know, the way that it's told in, you know, past tense. But I felt this is more, I felt that in this one, it was more my own style of writing. And
yeah, it's quite horror noir.
Yeah, and a little bit horny. So
Horny horror noir. That sounds like a porn star name, doesn't it?
Yeah, because Lovecraft never, in his stories, he never talks about romance or any like carnal things.
No, that was more of a Poe thing, wasn't it?
And well, not really. Like, you know, even Poe. I mean, Poe had more. Yeah, okay, romance, but in Poe's case, it was always like tragic romance. He talked about, like, you know, people's girlfriends and wives dying tragically and things like that. Yeah. So don't get me wrong. Like, obviously, there's some influence of Poe and Lovecraft still in this, and, you know, the kind of indescribable horror that is the quote-unquote phantom. I'm not really a fan of the name that I gave it, but I had to give it some name. It couldn't just be a creature again or something like that.
Can't be ghoul, can't be I can't think of anything other than monster, creature, all the other
Yeah.
generic names.
And the other thing is like I kind of waved my hand away. So whatever did happen to the human eating giant of Innsborough, we don't know. That's the whole thing of the prologue, is showing that these horrible things happen, but then they just kind of pass with time, and people kind of forget about them. And that was kind of well, okay. That is a very Lovecraftian thing, that there's something buried underneath something. That I admit. That is straight Lovecraft. Um, so that's the thing. So what do you think? What did you think about the narrator of this story versus the narrator of the two previous stories?
I like him, but then again, I'm a fan of like the whole neo-noir style character, the one that talks to himself all the time, walks around,
Okay.
up depressed, police officer with the trench coat,
Yeah.
swearing alcoholic.
Yeah. Exactly. And actually,
Fan of
yeah.
that style. I'm a fan of that style of character. I should just shorten it to that, but
Yeah. And
yeah.
and actually, yeah. Kenny also Aqualung. I sent the story to him immediately after I'd finished writing it.
Oh, he'd be an awesome voice for that character, actually.
Okay, I guess we got to do a second reading of this at some point.
hmm
But yeah, he,
He
he
can.
said he loves suspense fiction as well, which
Mm.
I do too. And that brings me to who was the inspiration for Detective Hudson in this. Okay, I'm sure you have never heard of this guy, but I'm still gonna ask: have you heard of this series of books called the Amos Decker series?
Oh, it's my favorite series. I read them every day.
So you've never heard of it?
No, I
No,
have
and you've
not.
never heard of the author either, David Baldacci.
Oh, probably seen it around, but never paid attention to it.
Okay, so David Baldacci, he writes trashy detective fiction stories, but I absolutely love his Amos Decker series, and I have the first 4 books in the series. There's 2 more, I think. Man, there might be even 3 more. I don't know. The guy writes really quickly. But the first one is really good. I do highly recommend that one if you check. But it's called The Memory Man. And Amos Decker is a giant is a giant, massive fat of a man, a detective whose family is murdered at the start of Memory Man, and he actually he becomes this bit of a slob, but he continues on he was a police detective, and then becomes a private detective, and then he becomes something else later down the line. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
but his gimmick. And the reason the book is called The Memory Man is that he has perfect recall. He has a photographic memory, and he remembers every detail of everything, every moment of his life, going back to an accident that he had in his when he went to college. So this guy, Amos Decker, is so Detective Hudson is slightly based on him. So my idea was that he's an out of shape, fat detective, kind of down on himself. Decker was not an alcoholic. His sin was that he always ate unhealthy foods. so,
Uh,
so he was greasy. He was more greasy than alcohol,
mm-hmm.
boozy. But at the end of the day, Amos Decker is a swell. He's a swell guy. He has difficulty like relating to people. So he has a bit of a, I wouldn't say like autism, but it's something akin to that. So that he has a little bit difficulty making friends and things. Partly has to do with the trauma of his family dying. But anyway, but the idea of a slob detective who's nevertheless good at his job. That's what inspired me to do Hudson. So Hudson is the guy. He knows something was up with Cohen during the giant killings, and was trying to do something about it but failed. He knew that there was something going on in the Steinmeier case and the creature in the basement, but he wasn't able to investigate it. So he's this guy who's a good cop, but always foiled by circumstances that are beyond his control. So that's his story, and and my thing with this, I wanted this story to have. So how would you describe the ending of the story? Would you describe it as a sad or a happy ending?
That's tragic for one,
Yeah.
but it's kind of a Oh, now you got me thinking. This is quite the deep question, actually.
Yeah, because that's one.
I say it's a bad question. No, it's a good question. I say it's a bad ending, but the way it's described, there could have been an even worse ending.
Yeah. So
So it could have been so much worse than what he got.
yeah, because I kind of left the endings of the last two stories a little bit unresolved. So the narrator in the Shadow Silo doesn't do anything about the giant. He just leaves when he realizes, oh, there's a fucking man-eating giant in this
Yeah,
town, huh?
that's what I got from it too. It's just an ending of another story of the Innsmouth. It's gonna happen again to some other unfortunate poor bastard.
Yeah, and we have a little bit of closure in the creature from the basement. That the basement burns down, so the thing in the tank. Remember when Steinmeier fell into the tank and became fused with all the animal parts? The thing in the tank probably died in the fire. But the narrator basically has to live with that horrible image in his mind for the rest of his life.
Yeah, I have to live with that horrible image for the rest of my life. The way you described that creature was just gruesome.
Yeah. So I wanted there to be a resolution to this story, but I also kind of did want to give Hudson like a little out. So his out is he got rid of the Phantom, but because of everything that happened, he's stuck in an asylum. But like he said, at least he's not in Innsborough anymore. He managed to get out of the fucking town that he was unhappy and happy in. So it's a sad, but it's also a sort of happy ending. I did leave it vague. It says that his like journal was recovered in 1978, so presumably he dies sometime in the 1970s. But it's never. But I let that also intentionally vague. Like, I didn't want to really comment on it. So yeah, okay. All right. So do you have any other comments about the story?
No, I do have suspicions, but that's for another time.
Yeah. Did you get the feeling like that maybe Hudson was just imagining the whole Phantom thing at some point?
No.
Okay. All right. So
No, I still suspect. I think I said this last time. I still suspect that Cohen is still the killer.
Oh, the narrator from the first story. Okay, yeah. That was funny because I knew I wanted to somehow utilize him because I needed something to hook this story to
Because
the.
I'm not remembering though. I'm pretty sure didn't I suspect him in that original as well, or the guy before?
You did suspect Ernest, because Cohen
Okay.
got the bookshop when Ernest died.
Yeah,
And
that's the guy I'm thinking of. I'm still suspecting him. I still think he's still alive.
yeah, but that is a you could definitely see it that way, but I don't like that kind of writing subterfuge. Like if you want my solid take on this, yeah, there definitely was a woman killing ghost thingy living underneath Innsborough, and Hudson stopped it. But the price was that he ends up in an asylum for the rest of his life. So yeah, that was the thing. Yeah, but I was
Sorry,
really happy.
I'm just wasting time with fantasy, but I've got another suspect as well.
Yep.
I do think it's also another one of the member of the police as well, because they always happen to be there as well. I know police are supposed to be up at a crime scene, but they always just happen to conveniently be there directly afterwards as well.
I mean, yeah, that is the other thing. Like, I kind of walk the line. How incompetent do I want to show the Innsborough police force being? Like in the Shadow of the Titan, the idea was that it was completely the killings were beyond their control. So obviously they would never find out the reality of it. But in the case of this, now we have a character who actually works for the police force. So you notice that he kind of bites his tongue a little bit. He doesn't want to say anything negative about them, but he does let it slip every once in a while. Like, yeah, the killings, they never get solved for some reason in this town. Yeah. Yeah. So there's that. I was a little worried about putting about placing the story in the 60s again, but I knew I had to place this before after the Steinmeier thing. And yeah,
I was getting the impression that you're doing a different story, like every 10 years after like the previous one, or in each different decade.
Yeah, but this one didn't happen in the 70s. It was supposed to be. This actually placed. I actually this was unfortunate timing because I placed the creature from the basement about roughly 10 years after the first story. But I didn't want to put this in the 70s. I wanted this to be still in the 60s, and I think 60s was still a late. I kind of wish I could have done this in the 50s. And maybe I could have. Like, that's the reason why I don't like the prologue, because I went into such a long explanation about everything. So, but,
Yeah, I see that.
But they did give me an excuse that Hudson has already been working at this town for 10 years, and he was working as a police officer, as a detective in another town for a couple of decades before that. So he's already middle-aged at this point. So that's why the comments about him getting old and things. So, so he's already seen a lot of shit, and he's annoyed that he never gets to solve cases properly. So that's what's driven him to drink. And yeah. So it was fun to write just a different kind of narrator, because the first narrator in the first story was a little bit closer to the way I was. The narrator in The Creature in the Basement was a little bit twisted. And this one is like, honestly, he's just kind of fucking done with everything, sort of narrator. But yeah, that was fun. But I thought that was fun to write. I really enjoyed writing. That's the thing about this story specifically. I loved writing it, but I was dreading, like, at some point I have to address the eyes of green thing. I came up with that from the very beginning. Like, that's gonna be the hook. It's gonna be a woman with eyes of green. And originally there was also a bit where I thought, like, oh, he's going to go to a prostitute and they're going to have the green eyes. And I thought, like, yeah, that seems like that's heading into too grody territory.
I was worried it was going to go into the same direction as what Big Trouble in Little China did.
Oh, yeah, that was not the inspiration, but yeah, there's thing. Oh, yeah, that's what I needed to talk about, was the title. So the title is The Face of Darkness. And it has the subtitle, The Story of Detective Hudson. And I hate it when stories have subtitles. I always I personally like if you have just a punchy title. But the reason there's two titles is because I couldn't decide what I wanted to call this story for the longest time. It started off as The Eyes of Green, because that's the hook that I used. But I thought, it's such a small thing. It only really comes into play at the very, very end, that I didn't like that title. I didn't like it that it wasn't descriptive enough and didn't really tell you what the story was about. So then, for the longest time, I had the story. I started off as Eyes of Green, but I very quickly changed it to just The Story of Detective Hudson as a placeholder title. And then, when I was finally getting ready to the finish line, and I decided that I was going to split it off into little sections. So then at the sections, I did titles for the sections. So I decided, okay, The Eyes of Green can be one subtitle. But then eventually, it had to be the face. The face had to be the thing. The Phantom, whatever it was, that had to be the title. And I decided, okay, The Face of Darkness, that's pretty good. Yeah. So... and it goes well with The Creature from the Darkness and the Shadow of Silo. So I was happy with that in the end. Yeah. And then I immediately did hammer. The other thing with the prologue is that I am hammering on the connections to the two previous stories, even though this story is totally unrelated. That was the whole thing. But yeah, I still I was really happy with it when I finally came to that ending. And it was kind of a chaotic ending. I didn't really know how I was going to, pull it off. But then I thought, okay, I don't want the Phantom to kill the woman, but the woman has to die, and the eyes do have to come into play. So that's how we get to that tragic ending. And then it worked out well, because I got to write the ending that I intended.
I like that little twist.
Yeah, okay.
Sort of also... It sort of also adds on to what you're trying to say. Did it really happen, or is he really, or is it just all in his mind? Could he unintentionally be the Phantom and he's been solely chasing down?
Yeah.
Sort of adds a new level of thinking, to add fun to, the post-reading.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. But you don't have anything else to add to that then?
No.
No, then I think we will end this horror story podcast, and that is the third and at that, for the moment at least, the final story in the Innsborough Cycle. I may write something else here, but I'm just happy that because I talked about this and it's been on my mind, and it was just fun to write a story again. So it was fun to do. So I think it's pretty late into the podcast, but is there anything you want to plug? You recently came out with a YouTube video.
Yes, I... sorry, I'm turning into a chewed-up cassette tape again. Yes, I'm starting to make content again very slowly. This year's been very rough for me.
Yeah.
I've been diagnosed with colitis, and, well, unfortunately, I nearly died a couple months ago, so there's that. But I've been getting treatment for this disease. I've been getting energy back in me. I've been finally decided to make content again, so I decided to stream some little bit of Kirby's Dream Land on Twitch, and you can find a replay of that either by looking up Emerald Rangers on Twitch, or you can go to my YouTube channel at Kaisercade, where you can find the replay of that, plus all of my other shows called Kaisercade, where I review video games.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I've got the budget of a public access TV show, but it's showbiz.
Yeah, and it's just nice to see you doing content again.
Oh yeah, I've been really good making content again too.
Yeah, I've been missing that. Yeah.
And it's nice to see that this podcast series is back after God only knows how long we've been asleep in the deep for.
Yeah, I think last time we did anything, I think it was it last autumn we did Call of Cthulhu?
Was it early this year, like summer, winter time this year?
That is exactly, that is my question. I don't remember. Anyway,
all we know is it happened.
Yeah, it happened, and you can go listen to that as well. But hey, thank you for listening to this horror story podcast. I've been TheHande Mäkinen, that has been Retrokaiser, and see you on the next one. Bye-bye.